Taghlib, how long is your presentation?
I think it's 20-25 minutes.
Okay, so that's great. We will leave half the time for questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll start in about 3-4 minutes, if it's possible, because there are more people being admitted to the session.
Sure.
Okay, so we can start. So thank you for actually registering for the first Nahrein Network Chatham House webinar. This is part of a series of webinars that we are organizing in partnership with Chatham House to look at the future of cultural heritage in Iraq. So it's focused on policy, and it's focused on practice rather than theory or academic work. It's more focused on what can we do now in the current situation, where are we now with the kind of challenges that we face. And as we all know, we all see what's happening in Iraq. The challenges are immense. So having a discussion about the future of cultural heritage in a situation of uncertainty is critical now, as it has been obviously for several years. What do we do about the past, particularly about the damage, the destruction we've seen since 2003 and also from the 1990s? And what do we do about the future? And I'm happy to say that we also have here Dr. Abdul al-Hamdani, who's a former minister. So it's good to have policymakers, people of influence to speak about, to participate in these discussions. And I think this particular discussion about Baghdad is often a neglected one. when it comes to international work, unfortunately. And we are joined today by the esteemed architect. Sorry, I'm still admitting people here. Yeah, we're joined by Taghlib AbdulHadi al Waily. And I'll just give a short introduction about his past. Taghlib is an architect and an urban planner. He received his undergraduate degree in architecture in 1974 and his master's and MA in urban and regional planning in 1977 from University of Baghdad. And since then, he's been practicing planning architecture in the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Iraq, and Canada. Taghlib is an author of Baghdad, 21st Century, The Historical City, that's the Arabic version, which was published in 2017, and the English version, which was translated, published in 2018, Baghdad, 21st Century Revival of Historical City, the same name. And both books review the city's past, analyze its present, and sets in detail his vision for the future of the historical city. Taghlib actually looks at and develops a roadmap, if you like to call it that, for the future revival, rehabilitation of historic Baghdad. And I think the best way to do this now is to listen to Taghlib's presentation and then to take questions and answers afterwards. And I would leave half the time for questions and answers. And this is a conversation only with Taghlib today. And we are obviously organizing a webinar series. So I'll send a link to the program for our future events. So if you'd like to start, Taghlib.
Thank you, Mihyar, for your introduction. I would like to thank Nahrein Network for making this opportunity for me to highlight a long-standing problem of Baghdad, and particularly Baghdad Historical City, which is not recognized since the beginning of the century. I would like to also say hi to Dr. Abdul Amir Al-Hamdani and to the participant for their interest in this discussion. I would like to mention an important issue regarding my vision or thoughts about Baghdad Historical City. Some people think that when I talk about Baghdad Historical City, they think that me and my team are after the conservation of heritage buildings, and which is not. It is part, yes, conservation is a part of our campaign to recognize Baghdad Historical City. But the aim is to build the capacity of this area to improve its economic future and quality of life for its citizens and visitors. Today, this area particularly is the heart of Baghdad, means the downtown and the city center of the capital of Iraq. This area, unfortunately, is neglected and suffers major decay. We will go through the presentation. So I just wanted to note that we are not after heritage conservation only. Heritage conservation is the result of reviving this area. So I'll start this presentation by having Baghdad Historical City as an example of the future of heritage in Iraq. Part one, I'll give you a brief history for the people who doesn't know what is Baghdad, or they have a brief idea. The round city was built in the year 762 AD and stayed for not more than two at Rusafa, stayed for about 150, 200 years, and then it was destroyed by floods and other reasons. So after the 12th century, it have moved from Karkh, which is the west side of Tigris River, to the east side of Tigris River, which is less vulnerable to floods. And since that time, it moved also to the south, to its current position, and stayed from the 12th century until the 20th century. Before the beginning at 1886, unfortunately, the Ottoman Wali have demolished the walls of Baghdad, and since that time, the frame of the city have changed a little, slowly. This is the city at the beginning, Rusafa, at the beginning of the 20th century. And that's the 18th century. That's how it is today. And this is its location. And this is what happened to it from 1920 to 1980. It have been destroyed totally by roads, modern roads, and the dense urban pattern have been shattered. The markets, continued markets have been cut into slices, as you see. The white shows the roads, the new roads which have been built within the city. Now, what is the current situation of this area? The rapid urbanization and modernization have affected, this is an example of the city center, not the whole area, but the city center, where they have cut also slices of areas and built a new construction according to the plans which have no relation to any comprehensive plan. So this have affected the area, deteriorated infrastructure today. It has traffic chaos, environmental pollution, heritage in danger, losing every day, loss of identity and character in the new construction, deserted alleys and slums within the area. This is the situation we are facing today in the heart of the city. That's our downtown. So the destruction of major areas in the historical city resulted in diminishing of related cultural heritage. It did not destroy the buildings or made slums only, but the people, their tradition, their culture also have been shattered and is in danger of loss today. There is a lot of city memory, history being lost day by day. One of the main reasons for this decay is the wholesale market. The wholesale markets have got a direct effect which affects loading and unloading decks being used in the open areas and in the squares. There is a lot of heritage building decay, traffic chaos, infrastructure decay, lack of services, security, corruption, fires every few days. All this is a reason of this wholesale market. This is a view on Rashid Street before last week. It's being used as this heritage trail is being used as backyard for garbage disposal and loading deck. That's a direct result of the presence of and dominance, actually, not only presence, dominance of wholesale market within the area. And if we leave this wholesale market to stay as the situation goes on, we are going to lose our city center, and we have, instead of the city center and downtown, we will have a big, enormous wholesale market which serves 9 million people. So today, the urban heritage is a burden to the state, to the financial institutions, instead of valuable assets. Countries have noted their historical cities and the value of their heritage, and they are using it to revitalize its economy to the benefit of its people. Today, the urban heritage is a burden. The government doesn't have money to protect it, doesn't have money to get the cultural heritage also developed and exposed and strengthened, and all we are losing, and all this cultural urban heritage is in danger. These are some photos which shows the situation of the physical heritage. Now, in this situation, what we can do to save and revive this area? I'll go quickly through a future vision. The principles are simple: man instead of car, sustainability instead of decay, conservation instead of modernization, memory and against neglect, green against pollution. We have a three-dimensional vision based on space, function, and time. Space means the areas, the morphological areas, which needs to be recomposed. There is imbalance in the functional and activities within the area, and there is a city memory which is being diminished, and we need to bring it back and reinstate the city memories, because Baghdad is full of memories in every corner. Baghdad is 1,250 years old, and every corner, every street, every alley, there is a story to be told. we need, so through this morphological composing, we need to reconnect the urban the spaces and components, reconnect the areas, the parks, recreate new spaces. Mustansiri as an example, recreating the riverfront. The second dimension is the functional rebalancing. We need to rebalance the markets and the activities. There are dense areas and there are loose areas. We need to restudy this, distribute the power of these. An example is the Sharjah. The third dimension, which is the most important dimension, we are talking about space. We talked about function, activities, and now we are talking about recollection of city memories. This is the heart. This is the soul of the city. We need to celebrate the history. We need to emphasize and reconfirm the memory and history for the new generations, to get them know their identity. I don't blame those people who went into Tahrir Square asking for home, Nurid Watan. Those people, they didn't find the home where they mix. They didn't find their city center. City center is a place where all people mix, all people try to practice their identity, practice their daily life, meet. This is missing in Baghdad. This is one of the major issues in, let's say, the social imbalance and social problems which we are facing. For instance, Bab al-Sharji, in the hearts of Iraqis, Bab al-Sharji is the East Gate, is in the hearts and minds of people. This gate have been demolished about 70 years ago, more than 70 years, about 8 years ago. But still they call it the East Gate. Recreation of physical. What is the result of such development and vision? There will be an urban development plus economic revitalization and social prosperity. This will be long-term stage sustainable development. Through riverfront development, these are strategies. Through the Rashid Street enhancement, through open spaces utilization instead of car, the historical souks revitalization, and the alleys and spines revival. All these together will make create an urban development, economic revitalization with social prosperity. Number two, will result in updated infrastructure and services, safe transportation system. This will be a renewed sustainable infrastructure, public transportation, and pedestrian services. And then protected heritage, flourishing tourism industry, and social pride. And this is one of the important establishing and celebrating city memory and enhancing cultural heritage. How this can be achieved? Of course, this cannot be achieved in a day or two, nor a month or two, nor a year or two. This can be achieved only through a long-term comprehensive plan. A staged long-term revival plan. Stage one is the Rusafa city center, which is between the Dijla River and Rashid Street. That will take about 5 years. Stage two is the Rusafa city center part 2, which is between Shara al-Rashid and Khulafa Street. Stage 3 will go beyond Khulafa Street to Kifah Street. And stage 4 will go from Kifah Street to Sheikh Omar Street. And then we'll go through Karkh, Western River Part 1, and then the last stage should be finished in the year 25, completing the whole area. The total area of Baghdad Historic City is about 9.8 kilometers square. The intervention operations within this area in 25 years will cover protection, preservation, conservation, adaptive maintenance, urban renewal, all sorts of kinds of interventions will be there on individual building scale or urban area scale. The parties involved definitely will be governmental institutions, universities, research center, international organization, and professional bodies. Definitely there are challenges. I'll go briefly through these challenges. The major challenge is the wholesale market effects. We need to transfer the wholesale activities, and that will create ease and space for retail outlets, services, and other activities. We have definitely financial, lack of government funds, needs private-public partnership. The legislative, there is a lack and insufficiency of legislations has to be dealt with to strengthen these legislations. Administrative, definitely there is an overlap of ownership and difficulties. We need to establishment of special authority to govern the Baghdad Historical City in all aspects. There is technical, there is lack of highly qualified expertise in management. This can be dealt with in training of required teams. And finally, and the most important is the social. There is low social and governmental awareness about this area, and needs a lot of work to implement a high awareness programs to deal with these issues. Definitely, there is a lot to be, a lot of details I'm going through very quickly. Maybe you can explain in the later in the discussion. I'm just putting the points. Behind all these points, there is a lot of studies and proposals have been made through the years, through workshops also. Now, the revival of Baghdad Historical City is to create a great place to live, work, and entertain. Is the recognition of city role in the world cultural development. Baghdad was the center of the world for centuries and have given a lot of science, art, culture, etc. So its place within the world culture the revival of the historical city shall strengthen the sense of belonging, reaffirm the city's memory and culture of to the new generation. It will also ensure the creation of hundreds of thousands of job opportunities along this period in an economically sustainable, healthy society. This is how the city center should become within the next 5 years, the first stage. What we are planning is to have pilot projects followed by other projects, pilot projects that revitalize the area around, and mainly to be developed by investors, developers, and public-private partnership. So this will affirm social unity, enhance health, environment, reconnect urban element, conserve urban heritage, and revitalize economic activity. So Baghdad Historical City its history creates its future, or builds its future. Thank you for listening, and I hope I have just put a few points together for our discussion. I'm ready.
Thank you, Taghlib. Thank you for that fascinating presentation. It's really a shame to see such a degradation of Baghdad, central Baghdad, the historic part of Baghdad. Can I just ask you a quick question? You've said 25 years this will take in terms of rehabilitation, the revival of historic Baghdad. Do you have a figure for the cost And what kind of structure would that sort of entail? Would it mean private sector, government money? Could you just give us a quick sort of overview of that aspect, and then we can take questions from our guests.
This is a 25 years long-term plan. It will cost definitely billions of dollars. Our estimation for the first stage, which is the 5 years, is about $4 billion. This $4 billion is, if you look at it from the economic point of view, from the feasibility point of view, you'll find that this is the heart of your city. This is the capital of Iraq. Okay. However, we know that the Iraqi government have problems in finance. Not recently. Recently is a deeper problems, but previously, from our studies, we know that the institutions, government institutions, start with making a plan for an area and put funds, buy the lands from the people, build a few buildings, and then the finance, there's a lack of finance, and they just forget about the project. An example, I'll give two examples, and there is a lot of examples you can see. Khulafa Street, that was from the 50s, or let's say, mid-50s, until today. The street is not complete. The slums behind it lacks everything, from infrastructure to everything. The other project is Shara Haifa in Karkh. Also, they started in the 80s. And then today, half of it is not done. You go to Kadmiya, the same. It's always they have a problem in sustainable project. So within the new circumstances and the new methodologies also have been addressed and used and in many projects around the world, is the partnership between private-public partnership, and we have been calling for this since years. There are problems within the decision making, and I hope that people will understand the importance of the partnership and the importance of giving incentive to the developers for such projects.
Let's try and find some of the questions here. One of the questions here is how can we petition, pressure the Iraqi government to be more involved and also financially to contribute to this project?
Well, we have been pushing for this through years, through social media, through direct contacts with the governments. Dr. Abdul knows about this. The only wall, I would say, concrete wall which we have faced within Iraq, if it's governmental institutions or other institution, academic, professional, or name it. Amanat Baghdad was the only objection for what we are trying to do. And I hope that the new Amin, the mayor of Baghdad, he have a good background about the heritage, and I think I hope he would pass something and do something for Baghdad city center, other than the previous attempts to develop Shar al-Rashid, Rashid Street. You see, there is a wrong understanding within the authorities we are having. They concentrate on Rashid Street. I agree, Rashid Street is a unique, have unique characteristics, and it is a marvelous piece of an exhibition for the architecture in Baghdad since the 20th, within the 20th century. But we should not forget that Rashid Street is the newest street within the historical city. The historical city is about 1,000 years of age. Rashid Street is 104 years, I think. And Rashid Street, you should not concentrate on it because very simple reason. Rashid Street is a spine affected by the surroundings. The surroundings, the wholesale markets are using Rashid Street as a backyard. So if we paint the buildings or whatever we do, or pave it, it will not help. Rashid Street will be revived only when we revitalize its activities, when we bring back its activities. Dr. Abdulhamid was a great help, and he was a great support, and unfortunately, he did not complete the mission he had. It was too short.
Another question here is an example of international organizations that could be involved in the rehabilitation of historic Baghdad. And there's also a question as part of that, an additional part of that question is about public-private partnerships, but I think you've probably answered some of that. So the question here is really about the type of involvement about international organizations I mean, are there any international organizations actually involved in the rehabilitation of historic Baghdad?
Okay. Sorry. The international organizations we have contacted UNESCO, we have contacted World Bank, we have contacted UNDP, we have contacted the Aga Khan, and all have been briefed by our vision. The problem, I've met Paolo Fontani, the UNESCO representative, and he said that they are very much interested in this project, but it has to come from an Iraqi authority. This Iraqi authority is Amanat Baghdad or Ministry of Culture. And both, they have this vision, and it depends on them. Once they are, as I told you, those institutions are aware and they are ready to help and be involved if and only if the Iraqi government asks. Full stop.
Thank you. Let's have another look at some of the questions. there's a question about street trees. Is there in the mayor's office a unit for parks and gardens, trees? Who's responsible for that? Could you expand on your vision for Scenic Square and gardens? It's really asking questions about the green spaces in historic Baghdad.
You see, there are few open spaces, which are the major one is Ministry of Defense area. It's a huge area, inaccessible for the people. And in our plan, we need to keep it within the long term. They have to let it go for the public. And you know, the Minister of Defense is hard to tackle, as I know. Green areas, yes, the riverfront have been revitalized and redeveloped to receive a lot of green areas. In addition, there are a few, Rashid Street itself have been planted in some areas also, and the open squares have also been used for pedestrian instead of cars. So all this will gather. That's in the city center. Beyond the city center, there are few open areas also, but unfortunately these open areas which are available today all have been given to investors because there is no master plan approved yet. And I hope that they will reserve these areas soon by the new mayor if the master plan will be approved.
Thank you. We have another question here about the, I think this is also a question about the Beirut model, and it's about the protection of historic buildings in areas that are to be developed in the future, how they be protected. And we're speaking here about, you know, the heritage buildings of historic Baghdad.
You see, in our plan, all heritage buildings registered and still existing has to be protected, because this is protected already by law. There are some few buildings have been demolished. The valuable buildings which have been demolished, like Khan Grigor or other few buildings recently demolished or burnt, this needs to be rebuilt as it was. Also in our plan is to re-establish and rebuild the city monument which have been demolished in the 20th century. Bab al-Sharji, Bab al-Mu'azzam, al-Qal'a, all has to be reinstated because we know that this is in our heart. Bab al-Mu'azzam, Bab al-Sharji, it's there. We have the plans, we know the location, we have photo documents. We can do it. If we can't do it, we can put a memory for these statues and to keep it in our city memory. So the protection already, but all these buildings are protected by law. Those buildings which are their facade have been destroyed has to be also reinstated. You know, this has to be. These are case studies. Has to be studied one by one. But in general policy, there is no heritage building to be demolished whatsoever. On the contrary.
Yeah. There's a question here about how will it be paid for? Will it also be paid from reparation funds from those that were part of the U.S. occupation? And that's one of the questions that's being asked here.
I'm sorry, again, I didn't get the...
Yeah, the question is there any possibility of some of the cost of this rehabilitation being paid by Allied invaders?
Well, this is a question to be asked for the government and the parliament. I don't know.
There's another question here. Old landmarks that have been demolished, like khans or city gates, can they be rebuilt as part of the plan?
Yeah, this is part of our plan, yes.
And there's another question here. The culture and communities, how lived, is there a separable part of the Heritage Center, churches, shrines, mosques? It's really a question about the communities, but I think you've covered some of that. But if you can go into some of that in more detail, but the people who currently live in historic Baghdad.
I didn't get the last paragraph of your...
Yeah. Maybe a bit more information about the people who do live in the historic part of Baghdad. What plans are there for their living spaces?
Yeah, most of the area within the center, the lower part between Rashid Street and riverfront, most of it is commercial, because wholesale market have domination there and they have kicked away all the residents. On the edge, in near Ministry of Defense in Jadid Hassan Pasha, this area is, you can say, about 40% slums and demolished buildings, and the rest are in very bad situation, have been used by very poor people because it lacks services and other things. It's very difficult to living condition. The rest of the areas, you can see people between Kifah, between Khulafa Street and Kifah. This area is inhabited by major Baghdadi people who live there for a long time, and some are who came from outside the city. But the central part is mostly commercial, used as storage, warehouses, workshops, to serve the wholesale markets.
I have a question here. It's a question about the impact or the kind of model that's been developed and its relevance for other parts of the country, such as Najaf and Wadi Salam, when it comes to tourism, the economy, heritage. Is this something that could be perhaps replicated in other areas? And what can we learn from other parts of the country that have been developed, if you like, from the 2003? I mean, they've seen some kind of development. Or are these models that we shouldn't use for Baghdad? What do you think?
Well, in our vision in Baghdad, we try to conserve the urban pattern as much as we can. Maybe we had freedom a bit on the riverfront, but we have been very conservative within the condensed urban pattern in other parts. Actually, we used to link the spines, the historical spines, which have been cut by the new streets. We have many solutions to strengthen the link between the spine and the souk spine, which comes from this side to the other side, and have been cut by the new streets. So in Baghdad Historical City, we are trying to keep everything to respect the spines, the alleyways, the heritage buildings, the heritage trails. All these have been respected. Regarding Najaf and Karbala, actually, this is, for me, is a disaster, because the old city have been cut and destroyed. If it's in Najaf or Karbala, there could be a lot of solutions that could have reserved the historical cities and made proper access for the visitors and pilgrims through the times. But unfortunately, in Kadhim, Karbala, and Najaf, the old cities have not been respected.
Thank you. There's a question here. I know I'm throwing all these questions, but we did start a bit late. There's a question here about registered heritage buildings. Is there a law to protect modern heritage buildings after 1921, such as Chadorchi's Abud Tower or Ibrahim's Row Olympic Club?
Olympic Club is outside the Baghdad Historical City. But definitely, you see, when we talk about heritage, we are talking about architectural significance. There is not only significant building which is have got time importance, historical importance. We are talking about also architectural importance. Sorry. So all this has to be protected. None have been demolished, but definitely the buildings which have effects, have got no architectural significance, nor historical significance, and it affects the characteristics of the area, has to be dealt with in different ways.
Yeah. Have you studied in any way, I mean, this is one of the questions here, the lessons from Beirut, particularly since Beirut was affected by war, and also because it had a drive, and it was rebuilt in large part by private developers. Are there any lessons to be learned from that experience for Baghdad?
Definitely, this have been studied thoroughly, I can say, and you see there are the Solidaire or Beirut example, Beirut city center, the Beirut business center. There is the model they have followed in financing the project as a self-finance is worth studying and worth adapting some major items of this model. I will not go to other models like the urban planning or the heritage, what they have done to the heritage, because this is, frankly, for me, it's not, I don't agree with most of what they have done, but economic, financial model is worth studying. There are complaints about the project that it have moved the people who are vulnerable, and they don't, the poor people, let's say, or low-class people, they have moved them, they have been forced to move from the city center to other areas. And I think this is impractical phenomena, because always city centers have got land value, high land value, and have got high rental and property value. Those people, they cannot sustain. And even if we give them a place there, they will not live there. They will leave to a cheaper place and rent this area. So we are talking about a phenomenon which is hypothetical. It doesn't work. I mean, nobody with low income would go and live in the center of Paris, for instance, nor in the center of London, because every place have got its value. I would not agree with this phenomenon because it's hypothetical, and I would agree, as I told you, that I would agree with some major points within the financial model, financing model of the Solidaire.
There's one question here about the archaeological investigation of historical Baghdad. Is that part of your, also part of your research? Because obviously this is an area that predates the Islamic Baghdad also.
I didn't
the question, would there be any archaeological investigations as part of your plan in historic Baghdad?
Okay, you see, historic Baghdad, I assure you that in every meter you dig, more than 2 meters, you will find something below. We have, I have seen personally in 3 sites, you dig, you will find, because this is, people have been living there for centuries, and there are layers of buildings, one over the other. Now, if there is any excavation within this area, and there will be a major, this is, by the way, this is the construction, a law that if you find any archaeological traces, when you dig, you have to inform the Ministry of Culture, and they have to come and inspect, and they decide either to move this, what you have, what was found, or protect this area, or continue your construction. So this is this is something which is dictated by law, and it's expected, definitely.
Thank you, Taghlib. Are there any other questions before I end this webinar? Okay, so I think that wraps it up. So thank you, Taghlib, for the fascinating presentation. I think I encourage everyone to be more involved in the Nahrein Network and also these webinars that we'll be organizing. And this is part of 12 webinars that we plan to organize over the next 2 months or so. So we'll be looking at intangible cultural heritage, conservation, the environment, the role of cultural heritage in peace making, a number of different issues. And you can find out more about that on our website or on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, or you can just directly email me. And Taghlib's presentation, I think, was really fascinating. It's one of the areas that I think has been neglected internationally, even though it's a significant part of not just Baghdad's identity, but Iraq's identity, because of the multiplicity of cultural groups and the histories that have crossed this land. Baghdad represents that, historic Baghdad represents that. So I think we need more international focus on this important aspect of cultural heritage in Iraq. So please, I would like to thank Taghlib al Waily again, and I will release a podcast that I recorded with Taghlib last week. I'll release it this week, so there'll be another chance to also listen to some of these challenges, perhaps also opportunities for rehabilitating, revitalizing historic Baghdad. And if you have any more questions, please email me. I can just give you my email right here, and then I could I could answer them. And also, if there are individuals who would like to speak, who have a topic to discuss with us about cultural heritage, then of course we can also do that in our webinars, and we also plan to do further webinars next year. So Taghlib, thank you again for your time. And on your podcast, I'll also put on the links to your website and your other work, so people can have more of a sort of in-depth look at your amazing, really fascinating contribution to revitalizing historic Baghdad.
Thank you, Mihir. I just wanted to mention that I was shocked to see two reports, not reports actually, two projects regarding revival of historic Mosul and historic Basra by the UNESCO last week. While I was shocked why Baghdad is not involved. And Baghdad was, this report have been shown to the UNESCO, to the government, blah, 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 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And studies are completed. Baghdad, Mosul and Basra more important than Baghdad? I'm happy for Mosul and Basra, yes, sure. But more important than Baghdad, Baghdad is the capital of Iraq. Baghdad, 1,250 years ago, old. This is insane. Anyhow, thank you, Mihir, for your introduction time, and for thanks for all participants and for Nahrein Network, and hope to keep in touch for the benefit of our beloved city, which have not been recognized yet by the international community, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.